Welcome, folks. Welcome to our final podcast of the season. Well, I guess our second last. We might have one to talk about the finals after the fact. I am your host, Hashim, alongside with my co-host, Zahid. Zahid, you there, buddy?
I'm here, Hashim. How you doing?
Good, man. Doing well yourself?
Good. Alhamdulillah.
Good. And we are joined by a very special guest. We are joined by the winner of the BSL Fantasy Challenge for this year, Yousaf Chaudhry of the Abbasids. Chu, how are you?
I'm doing good. Nice to be here.
Okay, well, first off, congratulations on not a great season and specifically showing your GM chops, which we'll get into a little bit later in the pod with regards to picking a great team. And I mean, shout out to you for having a lot of faith in your team itself and believing in guys in your team, in the Abbasids, and picking a lot of guys from your squad that obviously had a great weekend and ended up leading you to the promised land in the BSL fantasy season, inshallah, hopefully in the BSL season in general. So to start off, I mean, you've been in the league for 6 years now, so you started at the very beginning. You've had a chance to, I think, play on 5 teams, if I have it right? Seljuks, Ayyubids 1 year, is that correct?
Yes.
And then Mamluks twice, and the Abbasids and the Mughals.
Yes.
And I think you and Zahid are the only players in the league to have ever played in 3 finals, which is pretty amazing.
I think Zahid had a better experience with winning 2 of them.
That's true. So tell us a bit more about your experience in the league and what made you join in the first place, how you found out about it. I know I didn't know you personally before the league started, but tell me a bit more about, I guess, how you came across the league and what made you want to join.
Tell you the truth, I was very hesitant to join initially. I had a lot of family that was playing. I think that even the year before they played a little bit of softball, but I used to play hardball cricket and pretty competitive, and I didn't think softball was that competitive. Just underhand pitching, coming so slow. But I was kind of a little bit injured and stuff, so I didn't want to play competitive cricket, and it was taking both days of the weekend, and you're playing 8 hours a day. So this was like maybe a laid back approach, maybe just relax and just try out the sport because everybody else I knew was doing it. So I was like, okay, let's give it a shot, and that's how I came about playing softball.
Yousaf, you ended up on a team full of your family in that first year. I think that was probably a learning experience for all of you. And I know when we've spoken about this, when you look back at the Seljuks teams that you guys had in the first year and maybe even the second year, now if you look back at those players, those would have been very formidable teams. But you guys are still in your learning curve of the softball experience. So
the first year I think half of our team didn't know the rules, didn't know you got to tag up or what's a force or anything. So we showed up. I think we didn't even know how to underpitch properly. It was maybe a fast pitch or a slow pitch. So we showed up the first game not knowing anything. So we've come a long way since then.
And you've come from there now to being a GM in BSL Knights. So how's that transition been? So now you're looked upon as the leader on a team. So that's in 3-4 years, you've come a long way in terms of carrying the sport.
It kind of helps because I had the experience of not knowing anything, and the new guys that come in, because a lot of nights we have a lot of new guys who've never played softball before. So you kind of could relate instead of getting upset. Oh, come on, how are you making that mistake? You kind of said, okay, I have a new guy. I went through the same thing. I didn't know the rules, so you kind of teach them better, and you're more patient with them, and it helps. We came a long way in 5 years, and I see these guys probably getting there faster because we know more about softball. Everybody around them is more involved than we were when we started BSL.
Awesome. So now onto your season this year. I think you're having a career year this year at the plate, notably with respect to, I think a few years back you showed a bit of pop and power too, but this year especially, I mean, you're hitting them over the fence with ease on Birchwood 1 straight to center field, deepest part of the field. Did you do anything this offseason that was different than what you usually do to prepare for this season? Was your goal to come in and try to flex a bit more power this year?
Yeah, it basically came down to I was typecasted. That's what I figured out. In BSL, you get typecasted really fast.
Yeah.
I played outfield 1 year, and then since then I could never play infield. I asked to play infield this year, and nobody even it was just ignored.
And then you got
So
traded. Yeah. So
yeah,
so
no, but even before that,
I'm
it was
joking. I'm
expected
joking.
that I play outfield. Even though I
Yeah.
asked for infield, but it is how it is. So I was always a lead off, or Zahid made me put behind him. But initially, I started at lead off on mobiles as well. So when you lead off, it doesn't make sense to go and hit solo homers or even try to hit for power. So so this year I got an opportunity to play a little bit late, and then play dome ball, so you kind of in the rhythm. That kind of helped.
Yeah.
I think that helped a lot because you played. I think we played like 30 games over the winter, which is a lot. Yeah, like it was to a
That's
point where
amazing.
like I think I
Yeah.
need a
Literally, you
break.
basically played straight for the full 12 months.
So that kind of helped. So knowing that okay, I'm not going to be lead up this year, so that kind of helped. And started hitting a little bit power. You try going for it more often than when you were lead
Yeah,
off.
that's the reason why I don't hit home runs, Drew. I sacrifice for the team, just so everybody
Yeah. Because
knows.
I remember in,
No, it's true. It's true. You have to sacrifice
of
a little
course, yeah.
bit because you got to play
That's
your position
totally
where
it.
you put in.
Of course, no. I mean, we've always had similar conversations with our guys that lead off. You don't want to have too much pop because you want to save those home runs for your big bats. And I mean, on your team, you have plenty of those, right? So the worst thing you can do is hit a solo shot early, and then you have guys like Billa or Crazy, or as Zahid mentioned himself, coming up wanting to hit it out of the park and not being able to because you're at the home run limit, right? Wherever in a key situation. So I totally understand where you're coming from in that sense. Now, this year too, I know you played with family the first few years, but you, after being traded, you had a chance to play with some of your oldest friends, a lot of guys you know from Knights. How's that been? Do you think it's beneficial to play with friends? Do you think it's always fun to play with friends, but there's always different expectations and you put different pressure on yourself because of your relationship with the guys there. Have you found it's been favorable or
I
unfavorable
think
for
it
you?
works both ways. There's good team chemistry, but I think everybody puts a lot of pressure on themselves because there's more expectations. So it's not like I'm putting more expectations. I see my friends putting more expectations on themselves. So when somebody
Yeah.
bases are loaded and you're not able to hit, they get way more upset when because your friends expect you to succeed in those situations. So it's a little bit less relaxed. Like I played for Mumlux last year. I was just going there and having fun. There's more responsibility this year, so it's different.
Yeah, and there's no break from it, right? I mean, the conversation even amongst your friends outside of Sundays ends up becoming about
Yeah,
softball
like
too, right? Which also is a gift, especially in this league. You see that a lot. Guys are really passionate about, which is amazing. We love to see that as a board, but at the same time, if it becomes a topic of conversation at every single thing you go to, and that can be good and that can be bad. Sometimes you want to get away from it, right?
no, definitely that happens. You have maybe like two WhatsApp group with your friends, then you have your team group, and then you sometimes get message from Zahid. This softball all week around.
So speaking of friends and the like, you seem to pick a lot of teammates and friends for your team in the BSL Fantasy Challenge. What was your approach going into it? A little bit of background for those of you that didn't know. We had a fantasy challenge this year for the Super Sunday. So for the last 4 games of the season, we'd have a chance to pick players, and each play there was 8 players in 12 different categories, and all the players were sorted by their OBP plus slugging for the year. So there's group one, group two, et cetera, and you have to pick one player from each one to amass a team of 12. Chu, what was your strategy in that? You did pick yourself, right?
I did not know.
Oh, you did
I
not.
was for some reason put in the first group with Batar, Crazy, Rehan, and it didn't make sense picking myself at that point.
Oh no. Well, I mean, literally, there was a science to put. You were there because your numbers put you
Yes,
there
no,
for a
you're
reason.
correct, but the way
Yeah.
that it's set up, it favors the home run hitters, and those guys are better home run
Yeah.
hitters than I am, so it didn't make sense to pick myself.
Yeah. So, what was your strategy going into the picks, and did you have an idea of what you wanted to do, or just try to pick the best player available in every round?
Yeah,
Did you show some
there
biases
was a
towards your
few
guys?
there was a few things because it was a little bit more challenging than a normal fantasy because here you gotta see who's available first of all. So I had some of the guys I had inside information, like I know Ismail was missing the last week because I talked to him. So yeah, a few guys I knew they were missing, so making sure you don't pick them. Then it came down to like matchups, and it also came down to who's playing more games in the small field, and there's a lot of factors when it came down to drafting this year. And my goal was not to just pick friends. It was basically to pick the best person available in that round.
Yeah, I had a similar strategy. So I just near the top as well, and I going based on trends, right? I knew, well, first of all, just Ismail missing 1 week, and then I knew the Mamluks have always played with a shorter lineup. So my strategy was obviously to pick guys from my own team, but also to pick a bunch of Mamluks because they probably will get extra at bats with a shorter lineup. So that was like, I think I had 4 or 5 Mamluks on my team just because I knew these guys probably will get one extra at bat every single game, which gives you an extra opportunity to score more
And that,
points. So
yeah, same
that was
here.
part of my strategy. Although I made one mistake. I made one big mistake. Nothing. Not that I didn't trust Crazy to have a fantastic
No, you
weekend.
didn't trust Crazy. We can just put that out.
Of course, I trust Crazy.
It's official
But
out
I picked
Crazy.
Darroch with my first because I figured Darroch was going to play 3 games on the small field. Even if he hits a total of 5 home runs, I probably would get the most. I didn't expect Crazy to hit 6 home runs in one day. That's just freaking ridiculous.
I think the only person that really expected that was Crazy because I think he expects to hit a home run every single time because he's so confident in himself. But like that's an insane performance. 6 home runs, 16 RBIs. And Zahid, you were saying it was almost 7, right? One was caught at the warning track?
Yeah, one was caught at the warning track. It would have been 5 in one game. So,
that's insane.
Man was pumped.
That's insane. Shu, you picked Crazy too, right?
I picked him. Yeah, I've seen him in practice. So I see him in practice. I see him in Thursdays. So I know when he's been hitting really, really well recently. So there was no other option at that point for me. Even though like the first week it seemed like Batar he hit 6. So I was like, oh wow, it's it was close.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think at that point anybody that had Batar probably thought they had won this thing because like who's going to be able to replicate that performance?
I don't think anyone in the top 5 had Batar though. Like after the first week, I could be wrong though. Because I think
all the Nusrat's guys that were in the fantasy had
they all picked him. Yes, I think
Nirvan had him in the first week.
I think Kizzer did as well. I think Kizzer did as well. But a lot of guys had Crazy. I think I'm pretty sure Butt had Crazy. Butt had himself, which was awesome too because he had a great first week. And you capitalize on that. You picked. I'm trying to think of. So there was a lot of out of the top players in every single round. Zahid was one, an Abbasid. Mokala was one, Abbasid. Bilal was one, Abbasid. Crazy was obviously one. And I think there was one more.
The top players from each category were Emma Damad.
I have the list. I don't think there was anybody.
Hamad Atif, second round. Nasrid, Dawi, third round. Abbasid, Suleiman, fourth round. Mamluks. Zahid, fifth round. Abbasids. Umar Jabbar, who had the second. I think he had the third most points of anybody. He went in the round after that, and not a single person picked him. Not a single person had him in their fantasy.
Yeah.
Then Ibrahim Sadar, Mamluks. Muhammad Kala, Abbasids. Imran Qureshi, Mamluks. Usman Ali, who also had a breakout game in that one of that. I think it was the second game of the first Super Sunday. And then Hamza Hussein and Saud Ramadan.
Yeah. That's amazing. A lot of Abbasids, a lot of Mamluks. And I think that showed too with 2 Abbas in the top 2, Suleiman being third place with the Mamluk. So a lot of betting on your own team, which was great. So now we enter into, I guess, the playoffs, right? What are you doing to prepare for playoffs and heading into that? I know we have a week break now with it being Labor Day long weekend, but you've been to the big dance 3 times before in the last 5 years. I know that you believe that you're getting over there again this year, and you have every reason to because your team's looked very, very good to close out. What are you doing differently, and what is your team doing differently to prepare for the playoffs?
We're playing like twice this week on Thursday and Tuesday for BSL nights. So it's not like we have a week off or anything. So I think 2 games in before the playoffs, and I think maybe a practice in. That'll be enough softball before the playoffs starts. Otherwise, we'll burn out.
Yeah, you want to make sure when you're going to the playoffs, everybody is kind of rested and also had some practice under their belt, right? Because obviously, the 2-week break, there will be some teams or some players that probably won't swing for 2 weeks, right? Although they probably should hit the batting cages or something like that, but that sometimes ends up happening, right? Just because people town or whatnot. So it's a fine balance of trying to figure out getting enough practice in, but also making sure guys are rested. Because in our case, we couldn't play 3 games in 2 days or 3 games in a matter of 12 hours, and like I think we played 5 p.m. As our first wildcard game, and then we play, if we get to the finals, then we play 5 p.m. again. So in 24 hours, we'll have three games. So it'll be tough on the old bodies, like myself. But Chu, how are you feeling? I know we've had the losses have really good end to the season, and you've been obviously to the finals 3 times. How would you compare this team to the previous team?
I think our Mamluks team last year was probably a bit stronger comparison to the rest of the league. This year, every team is pretty good, so that's the difference between other years and this year. This year, it's probably like 4 teams that any of them could win it. That's not been the case in the past. So that kind of, it makes it more competitive. But we feel pretty confident. Guys have been hitting really well last few weeks, which, from top to bottom, which, makes you pretty confident. But then we face Nasrets who've been hitting really well too. But I'm not, too excited about. I think we'll be playing one game under the night lights, and we haven't done that all season, so that's not something I'm looking forward to. But it is what it is.
Yeah, we have experience playing this on nights under the lights. Like I think I
Yes,
yeah, I
I do,
know
but not
it is
everybody
a little bit
plays
different, right?
NBSL nights.
Reading balls in the light, in the dark sky and whatnot. So yeah, it can be a little bit different, but at this point,
Because I think this year for Sundays we probably had like 80% of our game like starting at 2 p.m.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
it'll be a stark
pretty.
contrast, and it'll probably be cool as well. Weather's already turned cooler over the last couple of weeks, so the ball will probably fly a little bit more, and probably will hang a little bit more in the air because of the thinner air and the cold weather. So it'll definitely be interesting. But yeah, going back to what you said, I think 3 points differentiated the number 1 seed to the number 6 seed. And strangely enough, I know Hashim, you and I spoke about this when we last met. The top 2 seeds earned a combined 2 points in the Super Sundays, and they still ended up as the top seed. Unreal. Like you think earning 2 points would probably drop you down a seed, but we finished the Super Sundays with the exact same standings that we had going into the Super Sundays, which boggles my mind. I don't know how that happened, but it just did.
You can break up this season into, I guess, 3 distinct parts, right? And it seems like there's been a hot team in all those different periods. So in the beginning, it was all Mughals, 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 and then the second month it was all Ottomans, which made their big run. The end as well, obviously, the Ayubids were kind of one of those teams that were good throughout those 2 months. But the last month, you guys have probably looked arguably the best, and I mean, the Nusters have always been here and there too, and the Mamluks have, right? So you have literally every single team has had a moment in which they've clearly looked like the best team from start to finish. So it's really interesting to see who's going to be hot, and it's interesting to have this break because it's another refresh of momentum like we've had before. This has been an interesting season this year in the sense of our breaks have lined up basically being like you play 3 weeks and you're off for 2, you play 4 weeks you're off for 3, and then you play 2 weeks and now you're off for 1, or you're off for 2. So there's been a little bit of a kind of broken up into different stanzas, if you will. That'll be really interesting to see who really has that momentum going into it. And I think the guys that play nights have an advantage because they're playing throughout. And you've seen that those guys have gotten a lot better in general, right? Because if you have more at bats during the week, then you have a chance to really show a lot more on Sundays and on Thursdays for that matter. And you can see that transition. So without picking yourselves, because I know obviously you guys, with reason, have full belief that you guys can win the championship. Who do you see as the biggest threat to your chance at the title in general? Not even looking at who you're facing, but just who do you think besides you guys would you put as the favorites or the team to beat?
I think our first matchup is probably one of the teams that probably are the favorites. Nasrets we're facing in the first game. And I think in the other bracket, I would say Mamluks are pretty solid overall. They got speed, they got outfield, they got bats. I think those are the 2 teams that that probably have probably biggest threat to us.
Yeah, and both of those teams have been hot too
Yeah.
going into that final month. Like obviously we've joked about the Nusrids all season that they can't win 2 games on a Sunday, but they ended up doing that in that final Sunday. And then the Mamluks, I would say Ismail's carried them for the middle of the season, but when we actually got approached to the end of the season, you've seen the other guys step up too. Like Suleiman had a fantastic final Sunday where he helped carry the offensive load while Ismail was away, and then we all know what Hassan and Tahir are capable of doing. So everybody's kind of stepped it up on that team, so that I can see why that team would be a little bit dangerous. They missed out on a bye by I think a couple of innings. Like they were up at one point in that final Mughals game, and then the Mughals just took over. So obviously they'll feel hurt by missing out on that bye because they'll have to play against the Mughals once again. But I think any team can take it. But if anybody had to guess, I think this year probably has the highest chance of 2 wildcard teams in the finals. It's never happened before. We've also had one team that's been kind of head and shoulders of everybody else, and you think they're kind of run through their side of the bracket. But this year, that's rough. I think anybody can surprise anybody.
Yeah, I think in the past, I think only the teams number 1 and 2 seeded that always win the championship. I think it might be different this year.
No,
Yeah,
for sure.
in year 1, it was the number 1 team. Year 2, I think the Ubas were number 2. Year 3, 2016.
That's right. No, I think you're right.
Was 2016 the Mamluks year? When they blew through everybody? Yeah. They were number 1. 2017, the Mughals were number 2. Sultans. No, Sultans weren't. That's number 2. They're number 2.
They were number 2.
Yeah.
Ones and twos have always won.
They were 2. Yeah. Yeah, it's always been 1s and 2s.
Yeah, I think even the difference this year is that the 1s and 2s, I guess, towards the end of the season, they're not as hot as they were in the beginning. So that's why maybe we're kind of discounting. Maybe
by no means
other seeds could win, but
yeah,
those teams have the ability to win.
Winning. They've shown it. They've beaten top teams throughout the season.
Exactly.
So the Ayubids and the Ottomans, while they're not hot right now and they haven't played a whole lot of good softball in the last month, but by no means are we saying that they can't win. Like they've shown that they can. If their bats get hot again, then it's a totally different story. Like remember Hosh, in the first podcast we talked about the Ayubids. I think they had like 20 or 30% more doubles or extra base hits than anybody in the league, right? So if they go back to their old ways that they had in the first half of the season,
that's right.
I think they could be the favorites again and going into the finals if we get there.
No, I agree completely. I think it's anyone. I think it's open to anyone, and it could really go any way, and it really depends on who really looks good going into the games. And again, you have to play the full 7 innings, right? So there can be a lot of even the matchups. I mean, you guys have played the Nusrids 3 times in the last month. I think the same can be said between. I think we've seen the Mughals play the Mamluks 3 times in the last month. So there's a lot of that going on where these teams are very familiar with each other, and it'll lead to it becoming a little bit more of a rivalry and a little bit more of an understanding of how they want to approach those games in the wild card, at least, to kind of see how that happens. And the ideal goal, I mean, it's happened every single year for a reason, but you hope the first 2 teams really beat up on each other, exhaust themselves, and that way the Ayubids and Ottomans can walk in being a lot more fresh and trying to get in, right? But it really depends, because I remember whenever we were on the Ottomans a few years ago, whenever we were the first place team against the Nusrids, we thought we played a really good game, and then down the stretch it led to the Nusrids had one phenomenal inning where they put 5 up on us, and that we didn't expect, right? And they came through after a big win. I can't remember who they beat in the first wildcard game.
It was the Sultans.
It was the Sultans. Okay, thank you. And then they played us, and we thought we had them the whole time. And even we were down 5 and we were confident in our chances. And obviously we ended up losing. But it really comes down to, I think there's a huge advantage to having that bye, just to focus on one game. And especially for the finals, because you're a lot more fresh, right? Like we have guys in our league that are a bit older, or that may feel it a bit more, because this is the only time in the entire season where you play back to back, like 2 days in a row, right? I know I always feel it because I have a bad shoulder, so the next day I'm hurting. I never perform well in the 3rd place game because largely in part of that. And I feel like that big thing, and just having one game, you're a lot more lighter on your feet. You don't feel as sore because you've only played 7 innings so far, as opposed to playing a full set of games and having to come back the next day within 24 hours and do it all again.
Yeah, but going in the finals, your adrenaline kicks in, right? You
Absolutely.
know everybody's going to be watching and whatnot, so you kind of ignore, like, I put through some injuries in this as well after 1 or 2 games the day before, but as soon as you step on that field, you forget about everything else. It all goes out the door, right? And after you get home after the finals, you're just like, man, that was painful. Like, you regret it for the rest of the week. So, yeah, I'll have to see what happens. It's definitely good. And I've always spoken to a couple of guys that aren't on my team, and they're like, well, first time in the playoffs, what to expect? Just go out and enjoy yourself, right? It's an opportunity to demonstrate your skill and your capabilities, and obviously one team's got to win and one team's got to lose, so try not to focus on that too much. And
for sure. All right, now who do you expect to have a really big like key playoff performers going into it? We'll start with you.
I would say people from my team. I would say Bilal and Crazy. I could see them, carrying the load of the team.
I can see that too.
On the defensive side, yeah.
I think so too. I think that we're going to see Batar show up and be his playoff self. I think he's going to have a phenomenal campaign as well, because I know he's so used to playing in these kind of atmospheres, and he always knows how to turn it up a notch, right? So I expect a lot from him for sure. I expect a lot from Crazy. I expect a lot from Ray. the Mughals have looked really interesting with Ray on the mound. I mean, Riyadh had a good season for sure, and then Ray kind of stepped in place of that. But with Osama now being locked in at shortstop, it gave him a bit more flexibility. And Ray seems to be confident on the mound and has the mindset to kind of not let the small things phase him, which I think Zahid, you can attest to, is probably the most important thing you need as a pitcher, to kind of focus on one batter at a time, right?
Yeah,
And not let
there's one.
a tough at bat get to you or anything like that. Just having that mental strength to get through it.
Yeah, there's one thing. One thing I've experienced in the playoffs is when pitching, and it may be compounded a little bit more for me because I have to bat lead off as well. But I never hit well in the playoffs, and that's just because I'm so focused on the minor details of pitching and the other team's lineup and our lineup and whatnot. So you'll see my career stats in the playoffs are lower than they would be in the regular season, just because as a pitcher, there's more. I guess there's more on your mind, and you're more focused on minor details versus regular season. Yeah, you have your hitting charts and all that, but you kind of just like, okay, let the outfield take care of that, right? Versus in the finals or in the playoffs, you kind of pay a little bit more attention to that stuff. So I don't know if that'll have an impact on Ray because obviously he'll be pitching in the playoffs for the first time. I assume pitching, but that's always something that's kind of I feel after playoffs are done, I'm just like I didn't hit so well because I didn't really focus as much as I would if I was just batting or just focused on my hitting. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see if that has an impact. But I think my surprise performer, if I had to pick somebody that will probably turn it up a notch, I expect Ron Bakar to turn it up.
For sure.
He's had to his standards, he's had an underperforming season. Yeah, he did finish. I think he had finished over 500, which is still an accomplishment. But I think to his standards, he's had a perfect season. And I think this coming weekend when he's going to be expected to kind of carry some of the offensive load for the Ayubas, I think he's going to step up.
No, for sure. And I think Umair's played in a lot of high stakes games before, Umair Sheikh, so he knows what it takes to win too, having won it before and having played in I guess he didn't play in the finals last year because he wasn't on the Mamluks, but he knows what it takes, and Jibs has that experience too, and Alibay has that experience too for that matter. So it's, and as do obviously guys like not Zayn Malik, Omar Chaudhry and others on the team. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they come in. It's the only team we haven't really talked about a lot has been the Ottomans, and we can't count them out either, right? Imran Taha are always going to show up big for whenever it counts most, and they've kind of been humming along the entire team. It's going to be, they can't be counted out either, for sure. So I mentioned Batar, obviously. I mean, maybe I'm biased, but I don't really care. But I mean, Shaheen always shows up big in the playoffs. The guy's an absolute, whenever it counts most, he's an absolute beast. And I know that he missed the last set of games before Super Sunday because he was away. But I know he's going to come up and he's going to be turned up. So it's really going to be interesting to see how it shows up. The match that I'm most excited about as a neutral is probably your first round matchup against the Nasrids, because you get two powerhouse offenses, two teams where the guys kind of know each other pretty well across the board, and arguably the two best pitchers in the league, right, in Zahid and Tansirvai. And that's obviously they're both gamers, they're both really intense. They kind of take turns with Riz, obviously who's not pitching this year, but take turns at all the pitching awards. I think it's gonna be a great matchup. One's gonna be really exciting for sure, and it can really go any way, which is really exciting. It should make for a very fun weekend.
The primetime matchup too is 5:00 game, so everybody be around watching the game, so that a little bit more pressure on both teams, knowing that you'll have probably 40 or 50 guys sitting there watching that game. So that I think that game has the potential of being a BSL, one of the best BSL games ever played, right? Just because of the players that are involved in it, I guess the environment going into it. So it'll be exciting. I'm looking forward to it.
Should be good for sure. All right, gentlemen. Chu, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you giving your insight into your team, into your season in general, and showing everyone that you smile and that you have a sense of humor, because you're always steel-faced to everyone. And it's nice to see the emotion from there to show that, Chu's a good guy, as we always see, kind of thing. And he can crack a joke and crack a smile. And we appreciate you taking part in this today. Congratulations again on a great season, and we wish you all the best going into the playoffs. Z, same thing to you. Good luck in the playoffs.
Yeah, Hosh, before we end, we got to get your hot take.
On?
Who's going to win the BSL championship this year? Yousaf and I are biased, so obviously we can't pick anybody but ourselves. But you're neutral here. Who's your take?
I'm I am a neutral, but I still have a lot of ties to the Mughals, so they're my pick this year.
Okay.
I have a lot of belief in them, so that's who I'm going with.
Okay, you heard it here first. Hashim's picking the Mughals.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. Chu, thank you again.
Welcome.
Z, good luck. Good luck heading into the playoffs to both of you. And thanks to everyone for listening.
Thanks, Hashim.
Thank you.